This is a video about the NSA's surveillance. It predates the Snowden leak by 6 months. This is another video from a different source with a very similar message. The NSA is lying. The government has copies of your emails. It predates the Snowden leak by over a year. These will be relevant later in the video, so heads up. So it was revealed not too long ago that Edward Snowden was offered asylum by Venezuela and a few other Latin American nations. Also North Korea offered him asylum. The United States seems very divided on Snowden. Some say he's a hero, some say he's a traitor, and on news videos I've seen comments praising him and comments calling him a traitor. But in either case, he's been very heavily criticized for fleeing the country, and more specifically, for fleeing to Hong Kong and to Russia. And now he's looking at seeking asylum in nations that aren't too fond of the United States. Some people say he's a traitor for fleeing to countries America isn't friendly with. Some people say he's a traitor because he exposed our security. Both criticisms are presented by those too uninformed to comprehend the situation they're criticizing. When people criticize Snowden for leaving the United States, I think, well, what did you expect him to do? Sit at his house sipping tea, wondering how long it'd take for him to be arrested and indefinitely detained without trial like Bradley Manning, or like the 19-year-old kid charged with sarcasm? And why would he flee to another nation that the USA is closely allied with, if only to be immediately arrested and sent right back to the States? Again, to be indefinitely detained without trial. Oddly, it seems a fairly large number of people actually believe that Snowden should have either sat on his hands to be arrested, or willfully gone to a good guy nation that would have arrested him and sent him back. That point of view is profoundly naive, steeped in a vast sea of ignorance so deep that I don't think anyone holding that position could possibly be well informed on the topic they hold their strong opinion on. But it does point out the general ignorance of the American masses. To someone even minimally informed about the behavior of the American government in recent years, the knowledge that Snowden would never be given a fair trial should be obvious. And I think this incident has had the unexpected revelation of exposing just how badly informed people really are. It seems to me that the many people who don't like Snowden are ignorant and naive enough to believe their rights actually haven't been trampled on, and that Snowden would get a fair trial, and a rapid trial, if he stayed. The Bill of Rights guarantees that, and yet it wasn't given to Manning, nor the 19-year-old currently detained in Texas. It seems to me that many don't even know about the stories like the 19-year-old kid indefinitely detained for sarcasm, and those that do are willing to make up any excuse necessary to maintain the belief that Obama is their savior. Well, that kid had it coming for being sarcastic in a video game. I'd never do anything like that. The profound level of hypocrisy in that assertion is acceptable to them because any logical fallacy or cognitive bias has license to be used if it works to preserve the illusion that everything is going to work out for them if they're apathetic and lazy enough. Worse are the people who know Snowden wouldn't be given a fair trial and criticize him for leaving anyway, as if allowing himself to be indefinitely detained would offer him some sort of moral victory that outweighs his own freedom and anything else he could do for the rest of his life while free. I find such a notion ridiculous. It seems to me that people are willing to say Snowden should have trusted the system and followed the rules, and information about how badly other American citizens are being treated as we speak is just too inconvenient a reality to recognize. It seems to me that some people want to believe that the legal system is capable of protecting us because that makes life more comfortable. After all, people are brought up to believe the rules protect them, and breaking the rules is bad. And they're willing to make sacrifices in order to preserve the illusion that the rules adequately protect them. That's something I've talked about in a previous video. This is, I think, the biggest problem America faces, the comatose state of the intelligence of its own citizenry. People seem to legitimately believe they have an entitlement to be uninformed, and have strong opinions that should be considered credible on topics they know little or nothing about. This is especially evident with the second criticism of Snowden, that being the compromise of security. I made a video about PRISM analyzing Obama's speech and the tactical validity the program had as a counterterrorism tool, and my conclusion, as I explained in that video, was that the program was not as good at counterterrorism as it was at descenticide. Most people who I see criticize Snowden in this manner don't really have anything to base their argument off of. So far, I have never, not even once, seen someone say he compromised our security and then be able to explain ways in which making the programs public compromised them. People say he compromised our security and yet cannot answer even basic questions about how the security systems functioned and how they were compromised. I'm not saying some security measures weren't lost from this. My point is that people compulsively believe that they are informed enough to come to a rational and informed conclusion on any topic without having even minimal understanding of that topic that they're talking about. People seem to see themselves as well informed on any given topic by default. In my video, I explained that the program wasn't very good at stopping terrorists, or at least that wasn't its primary utility. Anyone can watch that video and seek to refute my points. Is there another tactical analysis video of PRISM explaining how it effectively stopped terrorist attacks out there that can refute the points I've made? Because if there is, I'd love to see it. And imagine how I, having worked to make a video explaining why PRISM wasn't a good counterterrorism tool, feel when I see people saying that PRISM provided us great security, and then never being able to cite even one example of the fantastic security it allegedly provided. My video is not private. No one is preventing these people from looking up the information and doing research to see if what they're spouting is true. They simply don't research it, because they feel entitled to a strong opinion on serious topics that they have no knowledge on. People feel that because something sounds right to them and feels right, that they can treat that as fact and retellitize it to others, to their children, etc., because they're entitled to their opinion, and their opinion should be treated with respect, even if their opinion is that if they murder their family with a chainsaw, they'll be blessed by an invisible pink unicorn. Of all things people in this country could feel entitled to, it had to be ignorance. Not a proper education, not health care, not a fair legal system, but to be lazy enough to not have to do any research and still have an opinion considered credible and qualified enough to vote. That, in itself, I feel, is the main problem with education in America, and indeed much of the world. In this democratic age, we teach everyone that their opinion is important, and their vote is important, because they're special, unique snowflakes, and our educational system neglects to teach children things like the importance of doing research, examining things from multiple perspectives, the use of the scientific method, or how to be scientifically literate. This has created a citizenry that is too uninformed to legitimately hold an election, and yet believes the election to be legitimate because they believe classifying themselves as informed with no effort on their part to actually be informed is in itself an entitlement. But anyway, back on the topic of Snowden. People are criticizing him for fleeing to nations the USA doesn't like. I'd like to point out that he doesn't really have a choice in the matter. Anyone could offer him asylum, and if given an option to hang out in a Western nation that would be considered one of the good guys, he'd probably take it over going to Latin America. In fact, that's why I suspect one of his more recent leaks was in regards to the EU nations being spied on. None of the European nations have offered to take him in, so he's attempting to drive a wedge between the United States and the EU to hopefully get one of them to decide to grant him asylum. That's my assessment, at least. Who knows what's actually going to happen as a result, though. He may just stay in Russia. But another thing I wanted to address is that I've also seen people offering praise to nations that have offered him asylum. North Korea is on that list. Let's get one thing straight. Those who are being friendly to Snowden are probably being friendly for very selfish reasons. Let's not jump to offering them praise just yet. Consider the ulterior motives. Acting favorably with Snowden is a good way to give the finger to the United States, and if doing that awards you public support, then there's a lot of benefit in offering Snowden sanctuary, even if you yourself are a human rights violator. Moreover, there's the potential utility value of Snowden and his information. North Korea obviously wants him because they fantasize about having the same spying power of the United States, and think Snowden would be a good asset towards that goal. Also, something I found interesting is not the nations coming out in support of Snowden, but the nations that have remained quiet. Where's Mongolia's stance? And the Middle East has been totally silent on the issue. I don't think a single Middle Eastern nation has even commented on it, either in favor of or against Snowden. Some nations are just trying to stay as far away from this issue as possible, and I find it interesting that the entire Mideast has been quiet so far. Perhaps that'll change in the future, so for now I reserve judgment. On the topic of the Middle East, I also find it interesting that in response to the Snowden leak, the U.S. military took steps to censor the Guardian website where the leaks were being posted from being viewed by American soldiers stationed in the Middle East. Because nothing says land of the free like forbidding our soldiers from being informed about their nation's own status of rights and freedoms. Could this perhaps be because informed soldiers are a dangerous thing and might start getting treacherous thoughts if they learned that their rights and freedoms that they were actively fighting for were being undermined and might consider doing something about it? But anyway, back to the topic of compromised security. Why is this a surprise to people, and why did people not complain back when the Patriot Act was passed? Oh, I remember. I remember very clearly. We were all caught up in terrorism and 9/11 to care about the minor details, because in the wake of a terrorist attack, we trusted the Bush administration. He seemed like a guy who would come down hard on the terrorists. He was a tough guy, much tougher than the Democrats, and it seemed like he was the right guy to keep America safe, so we didn't question the Patriot Act. But in any case, Snowden's leaks aren't new revelations of what the government was doing, not if you had an interest in that topic already before it became big news. The two videos I showed you at the start predate Snowden's leaks by 6 months and a year respectively. All Snowden did was show some of these specifics, and that got media attention. But if you had an interest in the programs the government runs, like me, you knew a long time ago that a program like PRISM was active, and you knew what it was doing. I knew the program existed. I knew what it did. I just didn't know its exact name. In one of my previous videos, I gave some unsubtle hints about the capabilities of the American government's surveillance, and discussed it to an extent in the comments section. That video also predated the Snowden leak. I didn't know exactly what the name PRISM meant at the time, but I did know my email could be hacked by the government to try to dig up dirt on me, as could commonly used social media and communications. Snowden didn't show me anything new. I knew about this, and anyone else could have if they had bothered to do the research. And that is one of the reasons why I consider the anti-Snowden stance claiming he compromised security by making these programs public knowledge to lack credibility and lack an informed opinion, because they were already public knowledge. People just didn't know the exact names and didn't care enough. Snowden's action of revealing the exact details triggered media attention, so really he's being called a traitor for drawing media attention to someone that anyone who had an interest in the topic already knew about. So I guess if one of my videos went viral, I'd be a criminal by virtue of attracting attention to an issue, because I would have committed the crime of pointing out something we all could be aware of, but aren't supposed to be. On that note, it seems that whether Snowden is or is not a traitor is focused on by the media, much more than the actual information he revealed. Maybe I'm a traitor for pointing that out. Please remember to like my video and subscribe to my channel, and also share it on the various interweb sites. Thank you, and I'll see you next time if the government hasn't tried to drone strike me yet. Later, YouTube.